The Bonanno family was in turmoil, internal strife and FBI infiltration had crippled its operations. A power vacuum emerged. Into this void stepped Joseph Massino, a man of quiet ruthlessness and cunning ambition. His reign began in the shadows, a stark contrast to the flamboyant bosses of old. Massino was different. He understood the new rules of the game. Survival depended on secrecy, on operating beneath the radar. The Bonanno family entered a new era, one defined by fear and whispered obedience. Massino's ascent was swift and brutal. He consolidated his power, eliminating rivals and silencing dissent. Fear became his weapon, loyalty his shield. He demanded absolute obedience, punishing any breach of trust with swift and merciless retribution. Under his reign, the Bonanno family transformed into a tightly controlled criminal enterprise. Gone were the days of open warfare and reckless violence. Massino's law was absolute. Disobedience meant death. The other families watched with a mixture of apprehension and respect. Massino's methods were effective, his grip on his family ironclad. He had restored order to the Bonanno family, but at what cost? The old-timers grumbled about his cautious approach, his obsession with secrecy, but even they couldn't deny his results. The Bonanno family was once again a force to be reckoned with. The FBI, however, remained vigilant. They knew Massino was a formidable adversary, a cunning criminal mastermind. They had infiltrated the other families, but the Bonanno family under Massino remained a closed book. His obsession with secrecy had created an impenetrable wall around his operations. The agents knew he was responsible for countless crimes, but they couldn't gather the evidence they needed. Massino was always one step ahead, a ghost in the machine. Massino's reign ushered in an era of unprecedented prosperity for the Bonanno family. He diversified their criminal portfolio, expanding into lucrative ventures like loan sharking, extortion, and drug trafficking. He understood the importance of legitimate businesses as fronts for their illicit activities. Restaurants, construction companies, and trucking firms became cash cows, masking their true nature. Profits soared, and the Bonanno family grew fat on the spoils of their illegal enterprises. But Massino never lost sight of the risks. He knew the FBI was always watching, waiting for him to slip up. He instilled a culture of paranoia within the ranks, demanding absolute discretion from his soldiers. Communication was conducted through coded messages and clandestine meetings. Wiretaps were to be avoided at all costs. Massino's paranoia bordered on obsession, but it kept the family one step ahead of the law. He knew that even the slightest mistake could bring their empire crashing down. One of Massino's most profitable ventures was the infiltration of labor unions. He understood that controlling these unions gave him access to vast sums of money and influence over key industries. He used this power to extort businesses, rig bids, and line his pockets with kickbacks. The construction industry, in particular, became a goldmine for the Bonanno family. Massino's control over the unions allowed him to dictate the terms of every major project in the city. Despite the risks, Massino's methods were undeniably effective. The Bonanno family thrived under his leadership, amassing wealth and power unmatched since the days of Carlo Gambino. But their success came at a steep price. The constant fear of surveillance, the paranoia, and the ever-present threat of betrayal created an atmosphere of suffocating tension within the ranks. Massino's reign was a time of both prosperity and paranoia, a dangerous balancing act that couldn't last forever. Maintaining order within a clandestine organization built on fear and loyalty required an iron fist. Massino understood this better than most. He ruled with absolute authority, demanding unwavering allegiance from his soldiers. Any sign of dissent was met with swift and brutal punishment. He knew that even the slightest crack in his facade of control could shatter the family's unity and leave them vulnerable to their enemies. Loyalty, for Massino, wasn't just expected, it was enforced. He surrounded himself with a small circle of trusted capos, men who had proven their worth through years of unwavering service. These men became his eyes and ears on the street, enforcing his will and ensuring the family's operations ran smoothly. They were rewarded handsomely for their loyalty, but lived with the understanding that any betrayal would be met with swift and merciless retribution. Massino understood that fear was a powerful motivator. He cultivated an aura of menace, reinforcing his authority with sporadic acts of violence. He knew that the mere threat of violence was often more effective than its actual use. The memory of past punishments served as a constant reminder of the consequences of disobedience. His soldiers operated with the chilling knowledge that their lives hung by a thread, their fate resting entirely in the hands of their enigmatic boss. But Massino's control stemmed from more than just fear. He understood the importance of rewarding loyalty and competence. He promoted those who demonstrated their value to the family, offering them a share of the spoils and a chance to climb the ranks. He knew that ambition could be harnessed, that the desire for power could be a powerful tool for control. By offering his soldiers a taste of the good life, he ensured their continued loyalty and fueled their desire to protect the family that had enriched them. Section 4. The Code of Silence, Omerta and the Fear of Betrayal. Central to the Mafia's power was the sacred Code of Silence, Omerta. This unwritten rule demanded absolute secrecy and loyalty to the family above all else. For Massino, Omerta was the lifeblood of his organization, the shield against law enforcement. Any breach of this code was punishable by death. The fear of betrayal was a constant undercurrent within the Bonanno family. Massino knew the greatest threat came from within his own ranks. Informants could unravel years of planning and bring down the organization. He instilled in his soldiers a deep-seated paranoia. Massino's obsession with secrecy extended to his own identity. He forbade his soldiers from speaking his name, using only gestures or coded nicknames. Even a whispered name could be picked up by a wiretap. He became a phantom, his true identity known only to a select few. The constant fear of betrayal created an atmosphere of suffocating paranoia. Soldiers lived double lives, their true allegiances shrouded in secrecy. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford. Every conversation, every meeting carried the risk of exposure. This climate of fear and suspicion sowed the seeds of discontent among the ranks. The pressure and lack of trust would ultimately contribute to Massino's downfall. Section 5. Shadows and Whispers, Evading the Law's Grasp. Massino's reign coincided with a time of increasing pressure from law enforcement. The FBI, armed with new surveillance technologies and emboldened by successful prosecutions of other mafia families, was determined to dismantle the Bonanno family. Massino, however, was a master of evasion, a phantom who seemed to operate one step ahead of the law. He understood the importance of staying invisible, of leaving no trace of his criminal activities. Meetings were held in nondescript locations, often in the back rooms of legitimate businesses owned by the family. Communication was conducted through coded messages, passed through intermediaries, or whispered in hushed tones. Massino was a firm believer in the old adage that loose lips sink ships. He knew that the FBI was always listening, and he took every precaution to ensure that their wiretaps yielded nothing but silence. Massino recognized the value of technology in both perpetrating and evading crime. He employed sophisticated counter-surveillance techniques to detect and disable FBI listening devices. His men were trained to spot the telltale signs of a wiretap, and they swept meeting locations for bugs with meticulous care. He understood that in the digital age, staying one step ahead of the technological curve was crucial for survival. Even with his meticulous precautions, Massino knew that the threat of arrest was always present. He drilled into his soldiers the importance of silence if apprehended by the authorities. Talking to the FBI was tantamount to signing your own death warrant. The Code of Omerta was absolute. To break it was to invite swift and brutal retribution not only upon yourself, but upon anyone you held dear. Section 6. The Invisible Don Anonymity as a Shield. Joseph Massino cultivated an aura of invisibility. He understood that notoriety was a liability, a beacon that attracted unwanted attention from law enforcement. Unlike the flamboyant mafia bosses of old, who craved media attention and reveled in their notoriety, Massino preferred to operate from the shadows. He became known as the Last Don, a phantom who ruled his empire with an iron fist but remained largely invisible to the outside world. Massino's aversion to publicity bordered on paranoia. He forbade his soldiers from using his name, preferring instead to be referred to by a series of nicknames and coded gestures. Even within the family, few knew the full extent of his criminal activities. He compartmentalized his operations, entrusting only his most trusted capos with specific tasks. This need for secrecy stemmed from a deep-seated fear of betrayal, a belief that any information shared had the potential to be used against him. Massino's anonymity extended to his personal life. He lived a modest lifestyle, avoiding the extravagant displays of wealth that had ensnared other mobsters. He eschewed flashy cars and expensive jewelry, preferring to blend in with the working-class neighborhoods that served as the Bonanno family's power base. His neighbors knew him as a quiet, unassuming man, a far cry from the ruthless mob boss who ruled the city's underworld. This carefully crafted facade of ordinariness served Massino well for years. While other Mafia families crumbled under the weight of FBI investigations and high-profile prosecutions, the Bonanno family thrived under his leadership. His low profile allowed him to operate with relative impunity, his criminal activities hidden beneath a veneer of normalcy. But Massino's luck, like that of all those who dance with the devil, would eventually run out. The walls were closing in, and his carefully constructed world of secrecy was about to come crashing down.